You are listening to the Outside the Boards podcast. I'm Danny O'Leary. For most of my professional career, I have worked in mainstream sports for some of the world's leading sports organizations and properties and blue-chip brands, helping to create award-winning omni-channel marketing campaigns, result-driven sales strategies, and impactful brand-building initiatives. But all that work doesn't compare to the fun, excitement, and challenges I've been fortunate to experience working for the king of all sports, polo. For nearly a decade, I've put my heart and ambition into helping advance the sport of polo. I've made lifelong friendships, met some incredible people, traveled to memorable polo destinations, and heard the craziest stories. My goal is to share these people, places, and stories with you and provide a unique behind-the-scenes perspective of the game that breaks all the common stereotypes, all while discussing key issues affecting the sport today and the constructive sharing of ideas, insights, solutions, and best case studies for the purpose of advancing polo globally. Every week, I will have honest conversations with polo industry leaders, enthusiasts, and awe-inspiring people who make this sport great and fun to be around. I hope through their knowledge and their unique perspectives, they will motivate and inspire you. Together, we will explore ways you can make small tweaks to boost your polo business, whether you are a club, event, team, or player, that will amount to big changes in revenue, participation, attendance, and exposure. Saddle up. Welcome to Outside the Boards with me, Danny O'Leary. Hi everyone, Danny O'Leary here, and welcome to Season 3 of the Outside the Boards podcast. First off, I want to thank everyone who has tuned in to listen to the nearly 20 episodes from Season 1 and 2, an idea that came as a result of the 2020 COVID-19 lockdowns. To date, over 6,500 listeners have tuned in on their phones or computers in the last 2 years. If you have a recommendation for a guest, please do not hesitate to share by emailing us at info@outsidetheboards.com. On this episode of Outside the Boards, I am really excited to introduce you to Brandon Phillips, a polo player, cancer survivor, and founder of Polo for Life, an organization that raises money to help pediatric cancer patients and their families from diagnosis and treatment to survivorship and long-term follow-up. Brandon is a professional polo player. During his career, he won many of the sport's most prestigious tournaments. However, winning these tournaments is not the biggest victory he has achieved. Everything seemed to be falling into place for the young Phillips until the day he woke up with severe swelling and aching in his left leg. 24 hours later, he was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and given a prognosis of 6 weeks to live. Phillips was just 14 years old. Phillips endured 5 grueling months of intensive chemotherapy sessions, yet never lost his spirit nor accepted death as an option. He beat the odds and went into remission. Brandon vowed to dedicate his life to pursuing what he loved most, polo. Later, he would fuse his passion for polo with his desire to help families facing the dreadful challenge of surviving childhood cancers. Brandon is an incredible human being who has faced tremendous odds at such a young age. He has taken his experience and has become an inspiration for millions of kids and their parents who are facing pediatric cancer. Brandon is a symbol of hope, and his story should be told to millions who are faced with this disease. Polo for Life's 8th annual Polo for a Purpose will take place on Monday, February 27, 2023, at the National Polo Center in Wellington, Florida. For more information, please contact Polo for Life Executive Director Barbara Cook at 917-838-2074 or barbara@poloforlife.org. So let's get started, everyone. Enjoy. Brandon Phillips, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. You are the first interview of Season 3 of Outside the Boards podcast, which is a very important role. So thank you for joining me, man.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
So where are you now these days? You're not in Florida right now, are you?
No, right now I'm in Argentina. So we're here for a month doing a little polo boot camp and looking for horses and doing a little tour here. And then we'll head back at the beginning of December back to Florida.
Yeah. Are you playing in any tournaments down there? You're not in the open, are you?
No. I'm not playing any tournaments. I brought down a sponsor of mine that I play with in the U.S. and we're down here looking for horses for him. And then we're putting him through the polo boot camp as well. So he's playing every day and we're practicing and training together to kind of just sharpen up for the Florida season.
Excellent. Who might that patron be?
It's Chaitan Krishna. It's a Drakari's polo team. Chaitan now has a place in Wellington. And then also he's recently this year has bought the Meadowbrook Polo Club in Long Island.
No
So
kidding. Okay.
so we're going to be now every summer playing up in Meadowbrook, and we're making that club blow that out a little more. We have a polo school program. We have many levels of polo we're offering, and so we're really trying to grow that program up there in New York, because there's been a bit of a void in that level. I mean, Greenwich Polo does an incredible job with the 16 goal and above, and then so we're trying to fit that low and medium goal void there close to New York City to help be more accessible, and also with the polo school and with more avenues to bring more people into the sport. So we have some great things happening there. So that'll be our summer home, and then we're in Wellington in the winters, of course.
How long has that void been in terms of the lower goal out in the Northeast?
So I believe they call it New York City Polo Club Haviland Hollow, which is about 2 hours north of the city. You have obviously in Southampton. They've for many years have had a great success, but the Hamptons are a good hour and a half from the city to 2 hours. Haviland Hollow is a good 2 hours away, so we're only about 20 miles, so we're a little closer. So maybe that when I'm saying that void, I'm meaning that area. We're one of the closest clubs to say Manhattan. So
what was the distance between you and Manhattan?
We're probably 22 miles or something. For I know from LaGuardia Airport, if you don't hit traffic, we're 17 minutes from the airport. So
that's great, man. Speaking from Chicago's perspective, Oak Brook is 17 miles straight outside the city. And the closest one after that is you're probably looking at 30 to 40 minutes outside. And then it gets longer after that. Being accessible to a major market is huge. That's a big deal. You're going to have success. I have no doubt about it.
I appreciate it. But yeah, that's our idea. So we got a year-round work to get that going, but it's been going great. We had our first summer this year that did very well, because we also have the Bethpage State Park, which I myself, I played the last U.S. Open there in 1995. It's a beautiful setup and facility that we have use of that every weekend, the finals and the big public games. So
that would kind of be your Sunday field, is
exactly.
Bethpage, and okay.
The idea is, us have Saturday polo there, and Sunday polo will be Greenwich, and Saturday will be us, is kind of the long-term plan.
Well, how many fields does Meadowbrook have now?
Meadowbrook, we have 2 fields, and then we have Bethpage, which is about 15 minutes away, so it's the third field. And then we have use of this Comset fields, which have been kind of out of commission for many years, but 2 decent practice fields, and with time we'll try to turn them into tournament fields too. So
wonderful, man. Well, good luck to you. There's a lot of similarities what you're going through in terms of what Oak Brook is going through right now. In that case, in terms of us looking to expand, and we have our Sunday field at Oak Brook, and then we might have access to other fields that are a little further away, but nonetheless, it keeps the progress that we've had here in Chicago, because the schools are growing like gangbusters here right now, and there's a really, really phenomenal base between like 0 to 4 goal polo out here, which is like 90% of all of our active players. But good on you, man, for bringing that back. That's awesome.
We're very excited. So there's a lot of big things in the works. It should start to hopefully bring this to fruition here in this coming summer.
Good deal. Well, we diverted a little bit, but that's something interesting to talk about nonetheless. But we want to learn a little bit more about Brandon Phillips and who you are, for people who are listening that know you, are good friends with you, but want to learn a little bit more about you, and those who don't, because you have a fantastic backstory, Brandon. You really, really do. Getting involved with your background and your polo, your family was to be heavily involved in equestrian sport, from hunter jumper, being in the Olympics, your uncles, I think I read an article they're involved in, and then obviously your bout with cancer. But, where are you from originally?
From King City, Ontario. So about 40 minutes north of Toronto. Yeah, about 40 minutes outside, which was luckily happened to be about 10 minutes away from the Toronto Polo Club.
Okay.
That's how kind of it all started to fall into play. Was where we lived was very close to the Toronto Polo Club, which was at the time there was probably only 3 or 4 polo clubs in the country.
Yeah.
So it was lucky that we got to be in the right area.
Now, do you go out there often to play at all? Do you go back and visit?
Only time I really go back is Toronto has mid-June to late third week of June. They have the Polo for Heart series, which is to benefit the Heart and Stroke Foundation of Canada. And they've been doing that since I've been a little kid. So I think they're close to 50 years they've probably been doing it. I played in that when I was 11 years old. That was the big highlight of the summer for all the members to get to play in that. And then now I go back each year to play in that, to participate. It's 1 or 2 games, and I go home to support that.
Now, how long did you live in Toronto for?
Until I was, 17, because at 17, I got my first opportunity to play polo professionally with Whitebridge Farm. So I left home pretty much then. At 17, I was still in high school, so I would go back and forth in between polo seasons. Finished high school, and I'm kind of by 19, I was officially, living in the States and on my own then.
How did you gravitate to polo? Because I read an article and it seems like your mom and sister were into an area of equestrian. You had your uncles who I think were Olympic medalists. And then there's you who is a polo player. So I'm curious as to kind of how you got involved in that sport and maybe not got involved in the others, or unless you've mastered all disciplines and polo is the one that stuck.
No. So I grew up on a horse farm. We had, a 10-acre horse farm there in King City. We had 6 to 7 polo horses. My father played polo as an amateur, my brother, and even my sister as little kids. So we were a polo family as far as for fun. There was a small group of horses. My father's friends, my parents' friends were a part of the polo club. And so that's how it started to become. I grew up just with horses. My mother's side of the family's the big equestrians. I mean, my grandmother, last couple of years before she passed, was inducted into the Canadian Horse Show Hall of Fame with all of her attributes of she did from breeding to showing to everything she's done with horses all across the country. And my mother comes from a big family of 6, and all of them show jumped and fox hunted at some point through their whole life. And my mother stuck more with the fox hunting, so her and my grandmother, Wednesdays and Saturdays were fox hunting at the Toronto North York Hunt. And then my mother's sisters married 2 professional show jumpers, Mac Cohn and Jay Hayes, and they went on to be on the Canadian Olympic team many times. I believe Mac was in the Atlanta Olympics, and it's going to kill me for forgetting, I think Beijing Olympics. Jay was in the Barcelona Olympics and Sydney Olympics. So they each, I believe, competed 2 or 3 times for the Canadian team in that. Mac, I know, got a bronze medal, a team bronze medal, I think in Beijing. So they were very successful, and obviously their daughters all showed as well. Jay's oldest daughter, Lauren, is still a professional show jumper. So she's made a career out of it. So we were all very horsey people. But like I said, my immediate family, we did it for fun. My father was a show jumper when he was a teenager. He got into it. And then friends of his, they didn't do anything in the winter. And a friend of his said, hey, we play in the arena, play polo over here at this club. Why don't you come over? So he came over. That's how he got into it. It was a friend basically invited him to do something on horses in the winter. So he got into that. We got a few horses, and my father played in the summers with his friends. And so we just grew up. I started getting on a horse and hitting a ball around 9 or 10 years old. And then by 11 years old, I played my first tournament there at the club. I was playing every other sport. I mean, hockey was my passion. I mean, that's what I was doing was hockey full time, and polo was something we did in the summers with the family.
I'd hope so. You're from Canada.
No expectations of becoming a professional or making a career out of it. So it was always about hockey. But, obviously grew up playing and learning and enjoyed the horses, but didn't even think I could make a career out of it. So it wasn't in my mind yet.
Yeah. Well, first off, I got to tell you, that's one family tack room that I would love to look into. If it's adorned by Olympic medals and all these accomplishments, I think the Phillips family should just be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Not one particular person. I think you've all made your mark.
Yeah. And then also my brother, he played it growing up too. He's 10 years older than I am, but he won the interscholastics many times, the high school tournament. They were very successful in the 80s with that. They called them the St. Andrews Polo Team, which was a school that my brother went to in Toronto. And so they went under that affiliate. But he was very good. And now him and his wife, racehorse trainers. So his wife is Catherine Day Phillips, which her father was Jimmy Day, who was another Canadian Olympic medalist in Mexico. He won that for show jumping. So my brother married into a very pronounced equestrian family, and now they're very successful in their own right with their racehorse training. So.
My gosh, what discipline of horse riding is your family not involved in?
I don't think we've done any Western yet, but
not any Western. Okay. So no rodeos or anything like that.
Knowing my grandmother at one point, she probably did it, since I think she's done absolutely everything there was to do with horses. But
yeah,
none of us that I know immediately, at least that are still alive, have ever done it.
Man, oh man. So when you started playing polo, you said you're about 9 or 10 years old. Was that the first time also that you got on a horse, or was it much earlier? I would assume that with equestrian family, you're probably on the horse at 4.
Actually, I still have the picture today that I was on a horse with my father, but I was 18 months old. As a baby, I'd jump on with my dad or my mom, and then we had pony and stuff like that. So I grew up riding, obviously, right from the beginning, and then actually physically got out there on the field with 7 other people when I was about 10 or 11 years old.
Now, was that around the time that your dad was invited to play?
No, he had already been playing.
Okay.
So I grew up watching him play, watching, with his friends. So it was a very social thing for our family. My father's best friends were other players. And back then there wasn't any professionals. It was just, everyone had their own horses. They made a team and went and played in another club and, fun weekend stuff. And so it was very much part of our summer was traveling as a family to where my father or brother were playing and our friends were playing. So it was just basically a great hobby that a family had that we could pretty much stay together all summer.
Do you feel that hockey played a role in you taking up polo or interest more just because of that team sport aspect versus other disciplines in equestrian sports?
Absolutely. Every sport I played was obviously a team sport. I mean, from hockey to basketball, baseball, a lot of soccer, rugby. I mean, I played everything and it was all team sports. I never played tennis or golf. I mean, I play it, but never did it competitively. So being with hockey, with obviously the speed and then the aggression and the team, and polo was very similar as far as that. So it was quite an easy transition as far as knowing working with your teammates and participating in these team events, traveling together and knowing how to work with other people and getting the good and bad out of each one. So it was helpful.
You said at 11 was the first tournament that you played in for polo?
Yes.
Was that arena or was that outdoor?
It was outdoor tournament. So how the Toronto Polo Club was structured was you had to go through the club polo school, which was in the fall, and it was in the arena. So they put you in the arena, and I'd already been that summer messing around on with my father was playing, I'd be kind of stick and balling around the outside of the field and stuff like that. But the way the club was worked is every new member goes through the polo school in the fall. If you pass that, you play the winter season in the arena. So obviously they liked it when we had boards around us so no one could get run away with. And if you qualified out of that, then now you are able to be a full member and you start the summer polo in June. So I would say my first tournament would have been outdoor. In the winters, there wasn't many tournaments we had. It was mainly club polo and stuff through the winter. So my first real tournament would have been, I was, I believe, 11 years old on the grass.
Now, were you playing polo and playing hockey simultaneously?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Hockey was all winter. I wasn't in a summer league for hockey at that time, so polo kind of took over for those 3 months. But in the winter, I'd play a lot of winter polo, but it was, around hockey. And I had basketball in the winter too. So there was something happening each night out of our house. One of my parents was having to drive me somewhere.
Yeah.
Outside the Board Season 3 podcast is presented by the United States Polo Association. The United States Polo Association is organized and exists for the purpose of promoting the game of polo, coordinating the activities of its member clubs and registered player members, arranging and supervising polo tournaments, competitions, and games, and providing rules, handicaps, and tournament conditions for those events. Its overarching goals are improving the sport and promoting the safety and welfare of its human and equine participants. Founded in 1890, the USPA is the largest voluntary sports organization in North America for the sport of polo. The USPA is currently made up of more than 200 member clubs and over 5,000 registered player members. It annually awards and oversees roughly 50 national tournaments hosted by its member clubs. For more information, please visit uspolo.org.
At what age did you realize you had a knack for polo and that you could potentially make a career out of this?
Well, the full story, it was really, I didn't know I could make a career out of it until I was asked to make a career out of it. But cancer made me a polo player. And by meaning that was when I got sick when I was 14, I was starting to get a little bit more involved, getting to play a little bit higher level of polo in the summers. And I had a big summer kind of organized with some friends and teams that I was getting to play. It was 92. All of a sudden, June 7th of 92 is when I woke up with my leg swollen. That then obviously ruined my summer of polo, but what it also did, by the weight I lost and the size I was, when I got better 5-6 months later, I wanted to rejoin hockey. And I was already a smaller kid at the time. And now kids were, instead of 30 pounds heavier, they were 60 and 70 pounds heavier than me and taller. And so all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, now I'm a midget out here fighting from behind. So I started thinking, well, polo something was maybe getting a little more interested. My size wouldn't matter as much. So I started to do a little bit more with polo. And not, again, still not even thinking a career, just thinking, okay, this might be a sport I'm starting to like. We had the horses, I might as well use them. So got into that. And then it was a funny story. I guess, it would have been 1994. And a very close family friend was my brother's best friend, and their whole family was the polo family in Toronto, the Offens. Todd Offen, he gave me a call, and he was the manager of a White Birch polo team in Connecticut. Well, actually, sorry, I should go back a year. Right after I finished with my cancer, one of a family friend offered my family and I to go down to Florida. And we're not going to get on a commercial flight yet with my counts and all this stuff. So fortunately, he had a plane, and he said, hey, I'm going to send your mom and brother and you down, go see Palm Beach. And I was like, wow, I've never been to Florida. This will be amazing. We go for a few days, get to go see Todd and the White Birch setup. So I was down there visiting them. I got the stick and ball, and it was, a big eye opener. I've never been to Florida, never saw professional polo before, never saw any of these huge operations. So that was very neat. And then the following summer, I started playing more. Todd came up to visit to play in the Polo for Heart like I do. He saw me play. I think it was -1 at the time and 16. And he said, he said, oh, wow, it's good. And then he said, why don't you come visit me in September in New York? We're playing the U.S. Open there. So that was another big thrill. So, okay, so we go to New York and to Connecticut to visit him. And he has me stick and balling out there on the field. It's a beautiful facility. And I look over on the fence, and there's Bautista Heggie and Mariano Aguirre. At the time, Bautista was 10 goals. Mariano was 9 goals. They were playing for White Birch in the Open that year, and they're watching. And I'm like, Todd, what are these guys watching for? I mean, I'm just a dumb kid. You and I are out here by ourselves. He goes, shut up.
Yeah, -1 goal.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not getting this. So he had me do a bunch of drills and run around and hit at speed, and I was having a great time. And that was it. Perfect. Finished watching the Open. I remember they lost the Open that year in overtime, the finals. And I left, went back to Toronto. And that was it. And I was like, no problem. I go back to school. And then all of a sudden I get a call from Todd, mid-December. Hey, what are you doing for Christmas? I don't know. I'm here in Toronto. He said, why don't you guys come down to Palm Beach again? He goes, come visit me. Wow, okay. I get to go down to Palm Beach for my Christmas break. So I come down there. Again, Todd has me riding some practices. And next thing you know, I'm in a practice with Peter Brandt, with the owner of White Birch. I'm like, Peter Brandt, 6 goals at the time. Long story short, we play the practice, and Peter comes up to me. He goes, all right, kid, that's good. You're going to stay this winter and play the 22 goal with us. So you're hired.
And what did you play before that? Like, anything in between?
I played 1 8-goal game that summer. It was the highest I've ever played. I filled in for somebody in Toronto. So I started talking. I was like, well, I got to go back to school. And all of a sudden, Todd just shut me up. He goes, shut up, kid. Don't say anything. You're fine. It's like, okay. So I get to, what is this? I got to go. My flight leaves in 2 days. And long story short, it was obviously a tryout. My parents knew all about it because I go to call them. They said, we know. We've already talked to your school. You're going to have a tutor. You're going to have this. You're staying in Florida. So I basically had a tryout for a high goal team, not even knowing I was trying out. Got the job, not even understanding what it was about. And next thing I know, I'm now staying in Florida and going to play the high goal season with White Birch. So I thought, okay, we're playing the February 22 goal. They're practicing now. They're like, okay, this is serious. I'm actually getting paid to do this. And holy cow. So
remind me, how old are you again during this whole thing?
I just turned 17.
Okay.
So now saying that, I mean, there's kids doing this at 12 years old, but mid-90s, 17, there was nobody really, still quite on the younger side to be doing all this.
And this is 3 years after your bout with cancer?
Yes, 2.5, 3 years after the cancer.
Wow.
So then I ended up, we playing the 22 goal. Things were going great. The team was Todd Offen, Mariano Aguirre, and myself. And I was 0 goals now. And we're halfway through the February league, and I still remember this day. I'm driving down South Shore Boulevard with Todd, and he goes, hey, do you think you can play 26 goal? And I looked at him. I said, I didn't know I could play 22 goal till about 2 weeks ago. I said, I don't know. What is 26 goal like? How much faster is that? He goes, well, don't worry, you'll be fine. I said, well, what's happening? Well, we just made a deal, and we've hired Adolfo Cambiaso, and Mariano went to 10, so we need a 0-goal player to play with Adolfo, Mariano, Peter Brandt to play the 26-goal season here in March and April. I was like, so I guess I'm staying. He goes, yeah, you're staying. I didn't really care what your answer was, but you're now going to play. So it's like, okay, so we finished the 22 goal. I think we actually lost the semifinals of the 22 goal in overtime. But then we go into the 26. Now I'm playing with Cambiaso, who's at the time, he's only 3 years older than me. So I'm 17, he's 20, but he's 10 goals and I'm 0. So of course, my dad's looking at me like, how is this guy 10 goals better than you? And he's only 3 years older. I'm like, Dad, I'm Canadian. I mean, I was playing hockey, this guy. So anyway, so that was our joke, but then played the first 26 goal, I believe what they call it, the International Open. We won that. This was at Palm Beach Polo and Country Club, but this would have been 95. Then played the Gold Cup, and I remember we ended up losing the Gold Cup in overtime to Ellerston. which was Gonzalo Pierres, Bautista Hagee, Red Armor, and Joanne Barry was playing for Kerry Packer. So we lost that, but then all of a sudden they said, okay, we're hiring you for the summer because now, we have the U.S. Open, which is 26 goals in New York. So now I'm staying with White Birch all summer and preparing to now play the U.S. Open in New York, where I was the kid the year before, amazed that, oh my God, look at this show. And exactly a year later, I'm actually playing for White Birch and I'm in the tournament.
Has your handicap changed at all during this thing? Like, were you still at a 0?
I'm still at 0 because they put me to 0 for that year, 95. And this is all now within the first 4 months of the year, all this is happening. So they've kept me at 0, which back then you very rarely got moved. Now it seems, handicaps can get tossed around pretty quick. But you stayed the whole year, no matter how underrated you were, especially as a kid, they left you. They gave you that shot to, finish out the season and, let's not bump you up and get you kicked off the team. It wasn't even really talked about, back then. So anyway, I stayed with them. We then ended up playing the CV Whitney, which we won in Greenwich, and then went on to the U.S. Open. And then again, we got playing at Bethpage Park, which is now, it's funny, now I'm back there. We played the finals, and there had to have been 20,000 people at the game. It was like a stadium at that field. And we ended up losing the finals to Memo Gracita. But we lost one game all year. It just happened to be the biggest game of the year, the finals of the Open. But it was a great start. So anyway, that was how my career started. And then I thought, I'm going to stick with this. And ended up staying with White Birch for about 3 more years, working, grooming, putting it wherever they needed me, just staying involved. I did that. Well, it started a bit of a change in 98. I was working for White Birch. They didn't have a spot on any of the teams for me, but I was helping manage and groom and whatever was needed to be done. And Memo Gracita needed a 2-goal player to play with himself, his brother Carlos Gracita, and John Goodman in Florida. So luckily, Peter Brandt was very nice because Peter was playing that same tournament, and he let me go play basically against him with Memo. And we had a very successful January, February, and we were undefeated and won both the January and February 22-goal leagues at Palm Beach Polo.
And you were at 2-goal at this time?
2 goals at that point. So I was playing with 2 10s with Carlos and Memo, and John Goodman was 0. So we had a very successful season with him, but then, still with White Birch. I went back with White Birch, and that was good. And then finished the year out with White Birch, and then Memo hired me for the following year round. So then I went with Memo Gracita for another 3 or 4 years, playing with him, working for him, traveling with him, did the whole English thing, and wherever he needed me to go. So I pretty much the first 6 to 7 years of my career, I didn't own a horse. I played whoever I was working for's horses, and I think I had 3 saddles. It was the only thing to my name. After about 3 years, Memo pulled me into his tack room. He said, I think I was 4 goals now at this point. And he says, Brandon, I think it's time you go on your own. And I was like, are you firing me? He goes, no. He goes, but I'm telling you, I think it's time you start building your own horses. And, there's a lot of opportunity. So I was like, great, Memo, I have 3 saddles and a car. I was like, where am I going with this? He handed me a list of about 30 horses he had, and all with their prices, and very, very nice prices he put for me, and said, listen, pick 6. And these horses, they're older horses, but horses he was playing the Open on, horses he was playing 22-goal polo on. So all very seasoned horses with age, but it was great. He said, pay me when you can. He says, I don't care if you pay me $5 a month or $5,000 a month. Just don't forget about me and send me something each month. So all of a sudden now I got 6 horses from Memo. He gave me some bridles and tack. I made a deal with a guy, Rick Sears, used to be a USP umpire, had a 10-horse trailer. I made a deal with him for that, traded my car in for a beat-up pickup truck, and that was it. Then went to Houston that spring with 6 horses and started off on my own and played the whole summer, ended up going back to Houston, playing the 20-goal with Angelo Cronamos out of Chicago. Played with him in that. Played against Memo in that, and next thing you know, Memo hired me back for the following year to play the U.S. Open with one of his sponsors. So then for the next 2 years, I played the U.S. Open with Memo at 4 goals and 5 goals. I came back and played with him, and then went out on my own to the summers, and then he'd hire me back for the winters to play the Open. So ended up kind of doing that. So still always keeping under the umbrella of everyone, but started to build my own string and my own horses and stuff like that. So that's how it started, and that was mid-90s, and we're still here 28 years later, still hitting the little ball around.
That is a wild ride. Man, oh man. So what was the height of your handicap?
I got to 6 goals. That was the year I played the Open as well with Freddie Mannix. I went out to Calgary that summer and we won the Canadian Open with Freddie's dad. And then Freddie Jr. was putting a team together for Florida. So I was 6 goals then, played the Open with him. And then I think I was about a year or two on 6 and then went to 5 forever. Then now I'm 4 the last couple of years.
Wonderful, man. Yeah, I had the luxury of having Freddie on my podcast last season. I remember meeting him for the first time when I worked for the United States Polo Association. It was one of the first guys I met. And when he walked into the 7th Shucker, I did not pin him for a polo player. He looked like Travis Pastrana. He had a flat bill cap. He had a T-shirt that was 2 sizes too big. He looked like he just came off of a motocross. Just goes to show that, people's perception of polo players is not all what you think they are. But man, that's a wild story. It's like this entire time when you're out there playing and you're being traveled and you're playing in front of 10 goal players the entire time, you're being recruited and they're looking at you and you kind of had no idea.
No, I just played dumb. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. And then, when I got sick, that was kind of during that time got me thinking a little bit more of polo and horses, and hockey started to be pushed aside a little more. And then polo started to still not thinking. I had no idea what the details and how you made a career and how much you get paid. I just knew that I was really starting to enjoy being with the horses and that kind of idea. And now seeing there were a couple professionals that were coming through Toronto, I'm like, wow, there are guys that are getting paid to do this. It was nice.
I had to imagine it was also a pretty big wake-up call when Memo's like, here, it's time to go out on your own kind of thing. Here are 6 horses and building a business and making something of your own. And that had to have been pretty hard, right?
Yeah, I was like, wait, I've always, for 7 years, I was kind of always under someone. But it was also, once it started to do it, I was like, it was what I eventually wanted, because most people want to be your own boss too. But it was definitely a little nerve-wracking that first summer, because a couple deals were working and falling apart. And I go, you're getting paid enough just to get to the next job. And I was like, wait a minute. I just go, wait, what happens when I'm not playing next? What do I do with these horses? I don't have a farm. I don't have a plate. Like, I got no base. I've got a little small apartment that I'm going to rent, monthly in Wellington. But I was like, where do I put everything?
What ended up being your base, in the event that happened?
Well, Wellington became base, but as it worked out, then that fall I started doing stuff with Memo. So Memo's like, here, we'll turn out the horses in North Carolina, come here, and those in between months, I was then back working for him, helping him. He had the La Herradura Classic going on in the fall in Wellington, and those slow months were doing kind of back with him whatever he needed me to do. And then learning more. Okay, we have a turnout facility in North Carolina I can use. It costs this much a month and this. And you start, filling out the gaps. Where's the best place? And then obviously the importance of getting a job each month. So you got a barn to put them in. So working the phones, I learned that pretty quick to make sure get jobs lined up for the winter. So months in advance, so you can start renting stalls and putting grooms and housing. And, you start learning pretty quick how organized you need to be and how much things cost, of course,
Was this the entire time you're also being tutored too?
No, I was already by this time. This was, 6-7 years later. After the tutoring stopped when I finished high school. So that was 96. I graduated high school. And then, this was now going into 2001, 2002, having to get all this stuff organized. So, it's not brain surgery. We can all do it, but it's just starting to learn the industry enough to know what's the best way, most cost effective and best for the horses and best for your career, where to go and who to listen to and who not to listen to, of course.
And your family was really supportive?
Extremely. Of course, they said, you love it, go for it. I remember telling my dad, I was like, shouldn't I be going to college? My father's thing was, he goes, why are you going to college? I said, well, he goes, you're applying to colleges that have polo, right? I said, yes. He goes, you're going to college to play polo, you want to party, and you want to meet girls, right? I said, well, that's kind of why you go to college. He goes, well, you're living by yourself in Wellington, so I know you're partying and meeting girls, and you're getting paid to play polo. So he goes, why are you going to go backwards? And I was like, okay, guess I'm not going to college. So that's where I, just stuck with doing that. And they were, of course, very supportive. They're all about if you love it, stick with it. That's what I was doing. So I think my mother still says the last time I think I received financial help from my parents, I was 17. And she goes, out of all the kids, she goes, of all the stories she's hearing, you left home at 17 and you never asked for anything. Yeah, I guess. I mean, how was I going to call home and ask for, Mom, could I have some money? So I was like, I wasn't going to do that.
Your father's just like very supportive here, go off on your own kind of thing. Was your mom reluctant at all? I mean, you got to hold on to your baby cub, for as long as you can.
She, of course, was constantly checking in, but she was very supportive too. I mean, she got more scared when I played hockey than when I played polo. So She always got worried at the road trips, and I'm on the road traveling for 3 days with 6 horses and a guy I grabbed as a groom that doesn't speak any English. And she's like, "Do you know where you're going?" I'm like, "Well, I got the maps out. I mean, I think I'm on the right road." And, that would freak her out. But once I got to a place, she was fine.
So let's jump ahead a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about Polo for Life. So how did that whole entire thing start?
So how it happened was I got a friend that was part of the marketing of the International Polo Club at IPC, and I'm friends with her, and she said, "Hey,"
How old were you real quick at this time?
I was in my early 30s.
Okay.
And they said, "Listen, the Leukemia Lymphoma Society has reached out and they want to do an event here. And we thought of you because of your past with your cancer and all that. And if you wanted to do something," I said, "Sure, of course." Because for many years when I finished with my cancer, I never wanted to talk about it. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I didn't want any people to know about it. I didn't even want to see bald people. I was freaked out about it all. Finally, when I now old enough, get in my 30s, I'm thinking it's time to start giving back and start, I could definitely help. So we did this event for them, and it was just a one-day little cocktail with a little polo game. Got some sponsorship at the club, and we raised $40,000 for them that day. And I kind of got into it. I had a committee helping and all this, and I said, "Well, this is something quite good." And the Leukemia Lymphoma Society loved it, wanted to do it the following year. So I got a bigger committee presence, brought some more people in, and we raised the next year $180,000. And then we did it again. And at this point, the event is called Polo for a Purpose. So I was just purely doing this one-off event. All proceeds went to the Leukemia Lymphoma Society, the Palm Beach chapter. And we did this for 3-4 years, and we got up to probably close to $450,000. We were raising. The event got a little bigger. We're having auctions and live auctions and silent auctions, and the lunch turned into a dinner. And we started getting bigger each year, and we were making quite a good chunk of money for them each year. I wanted to know a little bit more of where this money was going. I know it's going to Leukemia Lymphoma Society, but exactly in what departments? I hate when they just say, "Oh, it's going for research," or it's very generalized. And I wanted to get a little more specific of I want to go touch something that we did. I want to touch the brick on the building that we helped build, or get a little bit more involved in where this money is going. So I decided then to start our own 501c3, which is now Polo for Life. And what I did there was I wanted to be basically in control of the money to see where it's going. And what we did then is I brought in some more beneficiaries. We brought in the Kids Cancer Foundation, which is locally there in Royal Palm. Post, which is Pediatric Oncology Support Team, which is about 20 minutes north of us, Joe DiMaggio Children's Hospital, and Miami Cancer Institute. So I brought them in, and what we did is we set up programs with them, and I said, "Listen, what we make out of these events, we're going to split it up between you all, but we're now earmarking what the money's going to go to, what programs. We even have some equestrian programs that are set up for kids and their families to go to, and a lot of things that their siblings and stuff are involved in as well." So we started then doing that, and that's where we grew in our events now. Last year was our 7th year. We raised $850,000 in that night.
Wow.
And now this year, my goal is to reach $1 million that night. So we have February 27th is our next Polo for a Purpose event, which we're still doing at a National Polo Center. But we now do on Field 1, the stadium field. We put a big game on, and then we do a big dinner. It's an Indian theme, so we do a big Indian cuisine dinner with a show and auctions and stuff like that afterwards in the pavilion.
Do you have Indian players coming in for it?
It's funny. Last year, I had 2 of the players that played with me. They play in Palm Beach, but they happen to be Indian. I didn't even thinking that. And all of a sudden, we're going onto the field. And I just have 2 Indian guys. One guy's from Canada and one guy's from here, but never thought of it that way. I was just asking. They wanted to be involved. So just a coincidence. Anyway, the event's now growing every year, and now we're trying to do a few more events throughout the year as well. But that's our Polo for a Purpose event that we do there in Wellington. It's our big one of the year.
Has it expanded at all? Are you looking to expand or to do things in other?
Yes, we're definitely looking. Our board members are a huge part of it. We've now adding a few more board members. Visa Waddell and PJ Risby are the giant force behind all this.
Mm-hmm.
It's great that I do what I can do, but the real money that comes in is with the work that they do. So, our board is starting to increase. But as far as the programs or as far as the events, I'm staying locally at the moment, just trying to keep in our wheelhouse. But I'm looking now to expand, especially in the New York area, with now that we have my relationship now with Chayton, and he's wanting to help and get involved as to what we can do at the Meadowbrook Polo Club, maybe put an event over the summer in New York. My goal is to try to do 3 events throughout the year in different places. And what we do then, I mean, obviously, if we go to New York, we'd have different beneficiaries, local ones. So, I couldn't go to New York and make $1 million or bring it back to Florida. So it stays in there. So we start working now, which I've got feelers out working with certain children's hospitals and stuff in the area. And let's say New York and let's say California was another idea to then work for that local community there and keep the money in that area. But obviously with the same intentions, the same programs we do in Florida, but to be doing them in New York.
Well, if Chicago is of interest to you, we'll be happy to welcome you here.
Would love to. When my father used to play in Chicago when I was a kid and I was back traveling, he used to play with George Alexander. And I remember going there as a kid. My brother worked for George Alexander for a year. I remember going to visit him when he was 17. So I was like 7 years old.
My gosh, everyone I talk to has some tie to Chicago at some point. Hey, you could play for Angelo. He still has Morgan Creek out in Yorkville. Yeah. His son Dean plays. Yeah.
I played with Dean and Angelo and Luis Escobar, would have been late 90s in Chicago. We played at 12 goal or something together. So, but haven't been there in a long time, but did spend many months in Chicago, let's say.
Outside the Board Season 3 podcast is presented by the National Polo Center Wellington. The National Polo Center in Wellington, Florida is located in the heart of South Florida's legendary horse country. The permanent home for polo in America, NPC is owned and managed by the United States Polo Association to showcase the finest the sport has to offer. The association's premier event, the Gauntlet of Polo, takes place from February to April each winter season. Throughout the year, the facilities are also used to showcase USPA member clubs and prestigious national tournament competition. Watching polo from the stadium, private boxes, fieldside tailgates, or special hospitality tents, all overlooking the US Polo ASSN Field 1 is an unparalleled experience. NPC invites you to enjoy the best polo in the country, taking place at one of the most beautiful venues in the world, the National Polo Center Wellington. For more information, visit nationalpolocenter.com.
No, I know you kind of mentioned it's still a little bit of a sore subject going back to when you had, it was non-Hodgkin's, was that right?
Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, NHL.
How long was your bout for until you were cleared?
How it was the dates are still pretty fixed in my head. I remember the Thursday was a polo game. Friday was a rugby game. Saturday was a soccer game, and woke up Sunday morning. My left leg was swollen, like my thigh was swollen, and it was aching like growing pains. So I thought nothing of it. It was like a growing pain idea.
Yeah, overuse. I mean, my gosh, look at you the past few days.
Yeah, exactly. So I didn't think that much, but then, pain wouldn't go away. I'm in the shower, like, oh, it won't go away. So I wake my mom up. Of course, it's a Sunday morning. Wake my parents up. And my mom noticed on the top of my leg, there were some broken blood vessels. So we call a family friend who was a doctor and said, oh, you better go to the local hospital and maybe it's a blood clot. So we go to the local hospital. They do some tests for blood clot. It's not a blood clot. They can't figure out why. And now my leg is starting to swell a little bit up by my thigh. So they tell me to go down to Toronto, go to the hospital for sick children. So luckily, Hospital for Sick Children is one of the top hospitals in the world, just 40 minutes away from us in Toronto. So we rush down there and they do more tests and they find a softball-sized tumor that is wrapped around my left ureter. So what had happened is it's gotten big enough that my left kidney hadn't probably been working for about a month, but you don't notice that. The other kidney's working. But it had gotten big enough that it pushed on the lymph nodes of my legs. My leg wasn't draining fluid. So my leg was basically swelling with fluid that's unable to go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So it does not look good. I remember saying this. He goes, but we're going to go in for a biopsy. If it is cancerous, we're going to immediately put a portacath in your chest, which is a little box that they'll hook up. Because if it's what we think it is and the way we're feeling it is, the chemotherapy you're going to have to be on is going to be, one of the strongest things we can find. So you're not going to be able to put the chemotherapy through regular veins. You're going to blow your veins up. So basically it's a portacath they stick in your chest that your IV would get hooked up to. So it goes right to your jugular and your main aorta. So your body, the veins, the biggest vein in your body, so it can take the drugs. So all I remember is going into that going, if I wake up and my chest hurts, shit went wrong. So of course I wake up, I'm laying on my stomach with a donut on my chest. I go, this doesn't look good. My mom's right there. And of course, my mom, the greatest woman in the world, she's like, don't worry, dear, you'll be fine. You're just going to have to have some drugs for the next few months. Don't worry about it. You'll be okay. I'm still out of it. So anyway, long story short, come out of it and start finding what's going on. Turns out I have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, stage 4. They tell my parents that I have about 6 weeks to live.
Ugh,
In fact, they didn't tell me at the time. Obviously, I'm a kid,
yeah.
but they tell my parents that. They then said, I'm going to lose my left kidney. 99% chance I'm going to lose my left leg if they can't get this to work. And, hopefully we get it down so you don't lose your life in the next 6 weeks. So what they're doing is they started immediately on, it's called the Berlin Protocol, was the protocol of chemotherapy drugs, which how I was explained is the doctor to me said, listen, kid, he says, we're giving everything the kitchen sink to you. Some drugs aren't even approved yet, but we don't have a choice. We don't have enough time. We're hitting you with everything. And I'm like, no problem. I can take anything. He goes, you're literally going to feel like we're beating the crap out of you with a baseball bat. And every time you're able to stand up, we're going to hit you again. I'm like, how bad can it be? It's just drugs they're giving me. I'll be fine. They started the drugs right away, and they would come in every hour with just a regular measuring tape, measuring my leg, going, if it gets to a certain size, we got to cut it off.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, I mean, within, I can't remember the time frame, it was quick that my leg started to go down. So that the initial bout of chemo that they started pounding into me started to shrink the tumor enough right away that at least the lymph nodes were able to drain, and my leg was seeming like it was going to be fine. So they ended up doing that. They treat your whole body. So I had spinal taps, what they do. I did 22 spinal taps. So during each treatment, it took a week of putting the chemotherapy drugs to administer the drugs. So you're in hospital for a week. I was in for the first 35 days from the day I walked in there for my leg hurts to 35 days later, which was after the first round of chemo, which it's a week of administering it. They do a spinal tap, which they'll extract the cerebral fluid to test that you don't have cancer anywhere else in your brain or anything there, and then they pump the chemotherapy through there to basically put into your cerebral fluid. So they're treating you head to toe, your brain, your everything, because how they explained it was like, we're firing at this thing and we don't want pieces to be ending up in other parts of your body, because it was not encapsulated, so they couldn't operate. It was attached and stuck to everything, so they couldn't go in and just cut it out. So they had to use drugs and basically blast it and hope to shrink it down enough. So you'd be in for a week. They'd say, okay, come home, come back in 2 weeks. Well, I'd get home, I think 2.5 days was the longest I was home, and your blood counts go so low. You're basically, then your body start to die. Anything, you get fever and you got to get rushed back. So you literally, I get rushed back to the hospital. My mom would fly back down, take me back down to the hospital, and they'd take about a week of keeping you alive. I mean, with everything, your blood counts were so low. I mean, a piece of dirt could kill you. So they were keeping you up. Then all of a sudden your counts would start to come up. You'd start to feel better. And that was on the 4th floor. And they go, okay, well, you're better now. Well, let's put you back up on the 6th floor, and you're going to have now another week of drugs. So you then just literally stay in hospital, get another week of drugs, and then you get those 2 days home until the world would collapse, and then they keep you alive for another 8 days, and then you start over. So I did that for 4.5 months, I believe. So it was June 7th, 1992 was the day I woke up with my leg swollen. And then I'd say I finished treatment roughly by the end of September. I was back at school probably late October, roughly there. And then I was back on the school basketball team by about the 10th of December. I think I got to play my first few minutes out there.
Wow. So were you free and clear of this by now at this point?
So what it was they believed they had gotten rid of it, but there was always still a speck, which you had to monitor it. It was turned out, thank God, just to be scar tissue. But what they do is every 2 weeks I'd have a CAT scan. Then it was every 4 weeks. Then it was every 6 weeks. And went like that till now I'm on, once a year I got to get checked still to this day. But every few weeks was, a very traumatic time for my family and I to wait for results and, okay, you're clear, and go another couple weeks. Okay, you're clear. And they just keep going. So it basically was a slow process of just checking, but that was it. So I kind of got back to normality probably by that January of 93. And like we said, then by 95, I was playing professionally in Florida. So almost exactly 2 years from when I was finished treatment to trying out in Florida.
My gosh, man, you are one tough motherfucker. No wonder you play polo. Are you still getting tested today? Is it just kind of an ongoing process?
Yeah, I just get blood work done. I have a local oncologist there in Florida in Wellington. They just check blood now, and if there's anything shows weird in the blood, they look more. But now I've a few things. The drugs they gave me were pretty potent. So I have a cardiologist I got to check. I've had some minor heart things over the last few years, which, they said the things we put in your system, you may see when you're in your 40s, you might start to develop some kind of heart issues. And so there's things that I'm kind of noticing now, like, your body, they beat the hell out of you, and it's basically they're killing the tumor, but it's poison they're putting in you. So
yeah.
I'm at the stage now, I'm waiting, certain things I'm starting to see, and nothing major, thank God. And, there's nothing that we can't, we just got to keep on top of stuff.
So what's in the future now then for Brandon Phillips? You got Polo for Life going on. That's something that will be continue to happen. You're in Argentina at the time, Billy. What are you going to be doing for the next 10 years?
Well, I'm hoping, let's see if Chayton keeps me around for that long. But, with them year round between Florida and New York, and I don't see my polo playing stopping anytime soon. So, I've had a back surgery here and there, and wear and tear, of course, from 28 years of beating the hell out of yourself. But I think I still got a good few more left. So we're going to keep with that. And now with the polo club there's a lot of moving parts in this organization I'm with now, thank God. So there's a lot of things I can help with. And then we have obviously Polo for Life is my passion. It's not a business by any sense. I have one employee, executive director, Barbara Cook, that helps me run it, but that's it. I've had many people come to me over the years saying me taking a salary and making this into a business, and I refuse. Mm-hmm. So I have a lot of friends and family that support me and help me in these events, and I couldn't be making money off it. It's just something I would never do. It's just something I do and that I want to do, and I feel like I need to, but it's never something I'd turn into a business. I'd let other people turn it into a business if they wanted, but I'd never gain a dollar from it for sure.
Where do you play during the summer?
So summers now I'll be in Meadowbrook. I played a lot in the last few. Before I was with Postage Stamp Farm in the last 7 years with Annabelle Garrett, who's been also a huge support with Polo for Life. Her foundation, Postage Stamp Farm Foundation, also she donates each year from the beginning, which helps pay the salary of Barbara Cook. So she basically covers all of our costs. So everyone else on top of that donates money, it all goes right to the right place.
Yeah.
That was very important to me too, and her to, when people give me $1, they know that $1's going somewhere and it's not going to pay for pencils or something. So Annabelle, I was with her for 7 years, and we played Greenwich mainly in the summers, Long Island in the summers. That was the Northeast she liked, and then we obviously played U.S. Opens and everything in Florida and the high goal. Unfortunately, this summer she decided to hang it up and concentrate more with her daughter. Has a fantastic show career she's moving into. So Annabelle used to be a show jumper herself, so she's decided that she's wanting to help and support there. So she's moving on from polo, but she's still a great friend and very helpful and a great supporter of Polo for Life.
That's great.
And then now moving on with phase 2 with Chayton and Jakari's polo team. There's big things in the works too, where he wants to go with his polo and where he wants to play and places he wants to play and levels he wants to play at. And now with the polo club, with Meadowbrook Polo Club. So there's a lot of things that we can grow and try to be a part of in the future here.
Well, if you ever want to come and play in a tournament in Chicago, we'll be happy to host you, and we'll be happy to reciprocate and send a Chicago team out there.
We'd love to. I'm sure, especially any reciprocal things like that with clubs, we're more than happy to support somewhere to get support back. So that'll definitely come into play here sooner or later.
Well, my gosh, Brandon, you are an inspiration, I think, to a lot of people. It's not just from polo, but what you've been through as a kid. I wish that on no one. You are a trooper and can kick ass. My gosh, it's unbelievable, your story, Brandon. And then you're by far one of my favorite interviews that I had the opportunity to have on my podcast and guests. So thank you so much for taking the time and telling your story. I know that everyone who will listen to it is going to learn a lot more about Brandon because it's a fantastic story. So I want to thank you, Brandon, for taking the time out of your day to join me, and best of luck to you, man. Really.
I appreciate it.
And excited to go out and visit you in Meadowbrook. Definitely.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
In 2012, the founders of Outside the Boards witnessed their first polo match and were stunned by the sport's beauty and brutality. Few sports, if any, have these combined qualities. The sport's grace, intensity, and warlike imagery create a shock and awe viewing experience like none other. Combine this with the sport's party-like atmosphere and lifestyle, and you have a recipe for success. Today, the sport has yet to witness its full potential. The industry is fragmented, riddled with politics and inexperience. Outside the Boards was purposely designed to change all of that and bring clarity to the sport by introducing best practices, insights, trends, and consulting services to industry stakeholders and interested brands so that they can reach their marketing potential and better navigate the sport. Whether you're a club seeking custom sponsorship and marketing solutions or simply looking for strategic advice, we encourage you to contact us today or subscribe to gain access to industry insights. Visit us at www.outsidetheboards.com or to learn more or email us at info@outsidetheboards.com. Now we have reached the part of the show where we address outside the boards issues affecting the sport of polo with the sharing of insights, ideas, and best practices towards solving everyday marketing, branding, and sponsorship problems, avoiding bad habits, or helping to navigate through new trends and how to best leverage those opportunities. On this episode, since we're on the topic of charities and non-for-profit organizations like Polo for Life, I thought that we'd take the opportunity to talk a little bit about how clubs can work with charities in certain ways and share some examples of what our club has done in the past as well. So aside from a charity renting space to host an event in coordination or in alignment with a pre-existing scheduled event where they can sell tickets to attend to their donors and what have you, or the execution of their own exclusive polo event that's proprietary, there are benefits to working with a charity and not-for-profit groups. The top three are they help drive attendance. They pull on the heartstrings of your existing attendees. They help enhance the experience with unique activities that you would not otherwise have at an event. I know in the past we worked with charities to do a small beer festival or a wine tasting, hay rides and things like that are extensions and ticketed extensions where those not-for-profits and charities can raise additional funds. So a number of different ways. And obviously with the help of driving attendance, it overall increases your ticket sales. So how do you make it beneficial for both parties? This is what I learned are some of the best ways to approach it without being a cost burden to the polo organization. In the past, our club has been approached by a number of charities where they're looking for a significant amount of the ticket revenue for each event. And polo, we can all be honest with each other, is not cheap to put on, as you guys all know. So here are a few ways to work with charities that have proven to be successful on our end. And a lot of the weight falls on the charities themselves and not-for-profit groups. So if they're not willing to put forth the effort in leveraging the audience that polo attracts, they're not going to do so well. But if they do, they're going to continue to come back and hopefully it's going to be beneficial to the club and the event organizer. So what are they? Ticket sales. I would recommend not giving any more than 20% of your ticket sales to charity. I personally don't really go over 10% on this area. We don't necessarily make a profit from ticket sales in itself on any given day. Weather plays a huge impact on whether that we are successful in selling tickets. So having 10%, I think, is a good protection. Don't go over 20%. Obviously, every club is different. Every operation is different. Do you lease the land? Do you own the land? There's a number of things to weigh in here. So just don't use my percentage. I just providing a baseline recommendation. Another great way that we've seen a lot of success is doing 50-50 raffles. Are always fun, and most times the winner always donates the remaining 50% that win back to the organization. The difficult part here sometimes is getting the permits that are required to host contests like these, because they kind of fall into the category of gambling. You see a lot of professional sports teams do 50-50 contests all throughout the event that are selling tickets and so on and so forth. We have always sold tickets as $5 per ticket or 5 for 20, and we've seen a lot of success. I think at the end of the day, we have raised more money in 50-50 raffles than we have sometimes in the 10% of the ticket sales at the end of the day. So 50-50s are always fun. Just getting the permits is a little bit tricky. You kind of do have to go through this. I'm pretty sure any local government or municipality will have ways of getting this approved. It's not that hard. It's a one-page application, at least on my end, to do. So the other is digital silent auctions. This is something I really encourage, just because a silent auction where you can walk up live and it has the items that you can see and touch and so on and so forth are great. But as you know, polo fields are incredibly large. People are very spread out. They don't have sometimes the motivation or know where exactly a silent auction might be held. So in this case, doing digital silent auctions are a great benefit because people can be on tune to how things are going via their phones from anywhere within the property. And so you get, majority of the attendees participating in a digital auction. We've heard very successful stories from non-polo events that have been successful in doing this. And on top of that, they can exist for longer periods of time. A silent auction that's live is during a scheduled event from the start to finish. Digital can be over a week-long period with it culminating at the event. So it's a good promotional tool to get people to come out. So that's highly encouraged. Although there is some work on it, if you're not intuitive to things digitally, it can be a little bit tricky. But if you are, it could be a great benefit for you. Grassroots effort on field. If your staff of the polo club's not doing it, it's highly encouraged that the non-for-profit or charities staff is going out and doing a grassroots effort to sell 50-50 raffles, promoting the silent auction, or just collecting cash and donations is a big one. If you can canvass the area and really pull on those heartstrings and get in front of people, the better. As I said before, polo fields are very, very large. People are very spread out. It's very difficult for people to lure them into one particular spot on a field that's 300 yards long. I think we all know this. The sale of club merchandise. This is something we've done before where for one day, we don't sell our merchandise. We give those rights to the charity or non-for-profit. They produce their own merchandise with our logo on it and have sold it and have also done quite well. They create original products, sometimes with different color schemes and things like that we normally don't sell. And they're one of a kind. So that's something that I've seen has raised, thousands of dollars as well. Another area that we have not done yet, but we've explored that also helps with the grassroots efforts is drop boxes scattered throughout the venue to make it easy for attendees to donate. This can be on either sideline, their lock and key, that's not anyone can walk off or steal or anything like that, to make it easy for people to go up, drop a check, drop an envelope, things like that can be picked up later. It's doing the work beyond just the grassroots level that people can know where to drop their money off instead of having one single location that can be difficult to find. The other, as I mentioned before early, is the high value activities that guests are required to pay for access, including tastings. I mentioned a beer tasting that we do, as well as wine tasting, pony and hay rides, things like that do go a long way. This kind of falls in line with some of the festivals that you see that have dunk tanks. Is a good example of this, where you're paying a certain amount of money to go and throw a ball to dunk your teacher or a governor or mayor or anything like that you secretly dislike at the end of the day. So these are all fun, creative ways to get charities involved that hopefully the clubs can benefit on the back end from an increase in attendance or liquor sales or food sales, what have they might be. These relationships can be done without it being too much of a burden or loss of revenue or cost to the club at the end of the day. So those are some of the insights I wanted to share with you all. I hope you took something away and hopefully can use it to execute or sell to current charities to partner with them as part of your season. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a great day. Bye. That was a great episode. What is the one thing you learned from today's conversation? If this episode had an impact on you in some way, then I encourage you to visit and subscribe to our website at OutsideTheBoards.com for more episodes and interviews with incredible guests. Thanks for stopping by, my friends, and hope to see you on the polo field.